Hello again, everyone. It's Mike from Two-Headed Giant, and we're back with another deck from the Mythic Championship. Today's deck is the runner-up, and that is Esper Control. And this is a very strong, very powerful deck. It didn't quite get there in the Mythic Championship. I saw missed lines of play where it may have actually taken home the glory, but Mono Blue edged it out. There were 3 Mono Blue decks, and Mono Blue was what won the day. There was also a Gruul aggro, or as I call it, Mono Red Gruul, because it's a Mono Red deck that just splashes green to be able to run Cindervines and Collision Colossus. There was Azorius aggro, there was an Izzet Phoenix, and there was a Simic Nexus deck. But today we are here to talk about the cards that make this deck work, that make this deck sing. So it has very, very few win conditions, which makes this deck actually, if you can get under this deck and stop them from doing their thing, it's entirely possible to beat this deck. So we're going to talk about it though. Obviously, the biggest threat in this deck is the 4 Teferi Hero of Dominarias. When Marlon and I played in our store championship, this isn't the exact list that he played, but Marlon played Esper Control. He took home the glory. He took home the gold with Esper Control, and this is one strong deck. So after Teferi, this deck runs 1 Karn. I actually don't have a Karn, embarrassingly enough. I don't have a Karn, but that was the one other win condition that this deck plays. So this deck really has to protect its Planeswalkers, because if it doesn't, then you're in trouble. The win condition that Marlon was playing in his deck that I personally like a little bit better than the Karn was a Chromium, and Chromium the Immutable, and that guy does a good job of basically staying out. And once he's out, it's really hard not to win. But there are decks that get out under this, and that's a big 7-drop, so Karn comes out a lot sooner and helps you draw more cards. This deck does a decent job of drawing cards, but not as much early on. It does have some filtering, though. The Forethought Erasures are very important to make sure that your opponent doesn't just do things to you that are going to wreck your game. Helps you stay in control of the game. We're going through our sorceries first. 3 Kaya's Wrath is a good solid number. You don't really want... I think if you go the full 4, you risk hitting some very negative hands in against potentially control decks, getting a bunch of these. I know that the first time that Marlon played his Esper Control, against the Esper Mirror, he managed to get all 3 of these in his hand, and it just worked out poorly like that. But against the creature decks, it's great, but again, too many in the opening hand wouldn't be a good thing. I love the art on that. Kaya slicing up that ghosty. That's Obsidat, actually. Or one of the Obsidat Ghost Council. Cry of the Carnarium is huge. It's incredible against red, it's incredible against white, and it's just sheer devastating against Izzet Phoenix, making their Phoenixes go away forever. This deck has a really strong returns against Izzet Phoenix. This card is one of the reasons why. This is going to see a lot of play for the next 1.5 years in Standard. Very, very good card. So on to our enchantments. 2 Search for Azcantas helps you get that filtering, make sure that you hit your lands, make sure that you hit your answers. Just an incredibly good card. Whether it's flipped or in enchantment mode, it is an absolute treasure. Eldest Reborn does incredibly good things. The fact that this is an uncommon seems like a crime. Just does an incredibly good job. It gets around mono blues, dive downs. Still very susceptible to Spell Pierce and all kinds of other counter magic, but the fact that it makes them sack their creature also gets around things that have Indestructible. Also gets around things that are very problematic like Niv Mizzet, and even Nezahal is starting to see some play here. So, and I think it actually may even deal well with Chromium. I have to look up rulings on that. So the deck plays 1 Moment of Craving. We're on to the instants and sorceries, and where most of our, if not all of our spot removal is. Though I guess Eldest Reborn does a good job there as well. Eldest Reborn is also, by the way, very good for playing their win conditions against them, whether it's pulling a Carnage Tyrant, a Teferi, a Niv Mizzet, Ral, or even, you know, taking somebody else's Drake. There's a number of things that will put on the battlefield that will just help you wreck the game. That's another win condition, funny enough. One Moment of Craving. This is incredible against aggro. You side more in against aggro. Helps keep you on life and gets rid of their creatures, gets around a Danto. 3 cast downs are really good. You know, it doesn't hit the legendary creatures, but it's a 2 mana kill spell. Most creatures are not legendary. Vraska will hit anything from your creatures to planeswalkers, gains you more life. Really versatile. A 1 of a negate. 3 Chemist's Insights. This helps you draw cards for days. I'll go over some alternate draw options for you, but this is what made it to the finals, so obviously it's not a bad card. Very, very good, very strong draw power, because you can play it twice with that Jumpstart, so you get that extra land that you don't need, and you turn it into 2 more lands at the end of a turn. Oh, sorry, I'm shaking the camera here. 3 Mortifies. This is incredibly important right now in Standard because there's so many powerful enchantments, from Experimental Frenzy to Wilderness Reclamation, and any number of things that you've got to get rid of, you've got to be able to deal with. And this is another card that is a prime example of why you play Esper over Jeskai right now. So 3 Mortifies. So we're going to run 3 Absorbs here. You know, I only have 2 in here, but I've got like 1 shiny Sinister Sabotage because I just like the shininess here. But you would want 3 Absorbs. We'll call all 3 of these Absorbs. And countering a spell, gaining 3 life. Both really important, especially against aggro, being able to, you know, not just get rid of one of their spells that would deal you damage against mono red, but then gaining 3 life. This is basically a 2-for-1 against them. So it's an incredibly powerful card right now in Standard. I don't know why people didn't think more of this when it came out. So on to the lands. Very simple. We've got our Shiny Swamp here. I pulled that out of, what's it called? A Standard Showdown pack. And then we've got 1 island here. Then we play the full playset of all the dual lands and shock lands, or the buddy lands and shock lands. So we have 4 Drowned Catacombs. By the way, I love this one. This is one that I actually purchased off TCG, and I think this is what goes as maybe lightly played on there. I could be mad about it, but instead I love telling the story about how this is what goes for lightly played. Love that Drowned Catacomb. So 4 of those, 4 Watery Graves. Got both arts in here. 4 Isolated Chapels. Got both arts, 2 different arts there. Same for the 4 Godless Shrines. Actually, those are all the old Godless Shrines. I need to put some of my newer ones in here. 4 Glacial Fortresses. 4 Hollowed Fountains. And that's the old art. So onto the sideboard, because the sideboard is honestly, with Esper Control, just as important as your main board. You have to be able to adapt your deck to play against different things. So we've already talked about Moment of Craving for aggro. There's 1 more of those to play. Eldest Reborn is incredible against mid-range. This is one of the reasons that I don't suggest trying to play Sultai right now, because this hurts that deck so badly. There's a number of reasons. I think Sultai just... it comes short against gates so often, I've found, that I'm kind of given up on it, to be honest, as that's being run a ton on Arena. But there's a number of decks that can get out under it. It's really good against red, but blue tears it up. I haven't found that many decks in the meta that it's just actually favorable against, even though it is an incredibly powerful, strong deck. 3 Hostage Takers. This is an incredible way to turn around a game. You know, you side in a lot of creatures in game 2. They take out a lot of their removal, and then you bring in the creatures, and all of a sudden you're stealing their Hydroid Krasis and casting it for your own, gaining your life, gaining your more cards. Really, really powerful card. Also just good against a number of other threats. People, for some reason, don't see this guy coming. So for the control games, or for the anything where you're afraid of a particularly bad non-creature spell, Duress is an absolute champ. We got 2 of those to go aside the 4 Thought Erasures. Just 1 negate in this list. We've got 4 Thief of Sanities. This is both very good against mono blue, as dropping this out, like if you're on the play with Esper Control, and you know they on turn 1 they get their guy out, but you know they have their turn 2, and then you have your turn 3, and then all of a sudden you drop a 2/2, and they've got a 1/1. It becomes a big problem unless they've got the hard counter for it with that Essence Capture. But anyway, very shiny Thief of Sanity, full play set. It's incredible against control, against anything that combos and mid-range. I've just seen this guy run away with stuff. So 2 Lyras. Lyra is very important here for a couple of reasons. Previously, I have seen most of the Orzhov decks these days are running this one right here, the Basilica Bellhaunt. But Lyra is actually a better choice because it's not only incredible against red, and most of the time red doesn't have an answer, and this will run away if you can get up to that 5 mana. And usually you have enough counters and spot removal in this deck to get there. So you drop one of these down, it runs away against those red decks that seem to plague probably a lot of your guys' game stores, as it does mine. So the other thing, because it has First Strike, this becomes incredibly relevant. All of a sudden, Tempest Djinn is not a thing anymore because it has First Strike. So Tempest Djinn's attack never goes off against this, and they have a real problem dealing with this if this resolves. Also very good against Drakes for the same reason. You know, doesn't matter how big it gets, all of a sudden it's stomping them in the face with its First Strike. Plus it's gaining you life. It runs away with the game rather fast. And lastly, the interesting inclusion here is old Kaya Orzhov Usurper. So Kaya here is actually in standards in a place where Kaya is actually better than I would have predicted. Mono White is running a ton of 1-drops, and her -1 to exile a 1-drop, that's really strong. Same thing with your green decks. A lot of them, especially Sultai, running an elf. And the fact that this takes them off of their mana ramp and can do it again and again if they don't kill it, very good. Mono blue running anywhere from 9 to 12 1-drop creatures. Again, and you know, it's a non-land permanent, so you know, even if they had it on a Tempest Djinn, you could get rid of a Curious Obsession with this. This card is devastating against mono blue. I saw this used to great effect in the championship round, and I expect to see this jump at least a little bit in price for its inclusion in the number 2 deck. Also, the fact that you can exile cards, this becomes an alternate win condition as well. Because you have so few win conditions, if you're playing against a deck like Drake's, this can pull the cards out of their graveyard and make sure those Drakes don't get big and gain you life. And then if they can't deal with it, which that deck doesn't have a ton of spot removal that can deal with this, then all of a sudden it can go off and deal a chunk of damage, but it can continue to control the game until you need it to do otherwise. So really great way to deal with old Terrimander. And you know, once Kaya's out, if they don't counter Kaya, then basically the only things that's going to stop her from doing her thing is Dive Down, or there's a couple other cards that will stop a Planeswalker from doing something, but they're in not being played in many lists. So very good card. Big surprise to see this in a top deck, but in the tournament, I'm not shocked because I knew it was good. I've been talking about this with Marlon for a while, and actually recently said, yeah, you should probably try this in there, but still, really nice to see it getting some play and getting it the recognition it deserves. So other cards that were not in the list, like I said, the old Basilica Bellhaunt is really good. This is incredibly good. Like, you know, if you're playing at your local game store and you're seeing a lot of red, this basically shuts down red. The fact that it's 4 toughness, so they're going to have to use 2 burn spells unless they have lava coils, 2 burn spells to get rid of it, already causes a problem. Then the fact that it gains them 3 life, so it gives them the opportunity to come back to basically just negate a previous lightning strike or skewer or wizard's lightning. The fact that it completely negates that is also a very big deal. The 4 toughness means it can effectively block anything in the deck. And then, you know, it also makes them discard. So basically, against mono red, this is like a 3-for-1, sometimes a 4-for-1. So very strong card if that's what the meta is at your local game store, as it is mine. I've also seen a number of Esper lists use this card. You know, Chemisters lets you draw multiple times, drawing 2 cards. You know, you got to discard for one of them, though. So this is going to let you draw more cards. And if you're able to use it during a main phase, during like a stalled game, it's going to allow you to scry 3 and help you set up your which 3 cards you're going to get. Incredibly powerful, but it is a 5-drop, which weakens the mana curve a bit. Therefore, I think, you know, Chemisters is, you know, bad. You know, you could go for a 4th Mortify, or if you really need to gain life, like against Experimental Frenzy decks, if you're seeing those all the time, Invoke the Divine is a really easy way to gain life and take out something important there. Ixalan's Binding is another really strong card. I remember playing this against a Jeskai opponent. I had one in the main and one in the side. I was playing Jeskai at the time, and I think I hit his Niv Mizzet and his Teferi with him, and he literally had no win condition unless he top-decked a Cleansing Nova to destroy all enchantments, and it was just... It's a very strong card. It might be too cute. It's a big mana cost. That's the big problem with it and why it's not seeing a ton of play. If you need more counters, Sinister Sabotage is great for helping you set up. You know, if you're not playing against aggressive decks, Sinister Sabotage might be better than Absorb in some cases. You know, you could consider replacing that one island, or maybe even the swamp as well, with a Memorial to Genius to make sure that you have extra ways to draw cards. Very good card. We've been playing it in our version, but it wasn't in the championship deck, so I didn't include it there. You could always go more Moment of Cravings, again, for a more aggro-heavy meta. And this is also a decent option, you know, if you're doing... It's really great when you're playing more hand control-y, but well, whether you are surveilling and then drawing your cards, setting up your draws, really powerful. And then the dispersal side, the fact that bouncing the biggest cost thing and for them, and then making them discard something if they're hurting on cards, as some decks like Sultai, if it's not hitting its Krasis, can be, then that can be potentially devastating to them. So anyway, we're running a bit long on this video, but control decks are complex and they are incredibly varied, so I wanted to make sure that we did this justice and just gave you guys some scenarios and some thoughts. Let us know what you think. What are you enjoying from, what decks are you enjoying? Have you been frustrated playing against this deck? Because I know this deck really does take over. I've played against it a number of times, and you know, it wasn't even this list. It can really just run away with things and just start holding multiple counters and just really do whatever it wants in certain situations. So let us know what you've had success with against it, or if you've been playing it and had success. I want to hear from you guys. Let us know what your favorite deck running is, what your favorite deck from these top 8 are. You know, we'll just have the one more after this where we highlight the mono blue. And that'll be it for the series, but I want to hear from you guys, what you're liking, what takeaways you've gotten from this Mythic Championship. And don't forget to shoot us a thumbs up. We really appreciate you guys supporting the channel, and we love being able to interact with you guys. And if you guys shoot us thumbs up, that lets us know that you like this kind of video and you want more of it. Alright guys, so also don't forget to subscribe, and until next time, I'm Mike from Two-Headed Giant, and have fun playing more Magic.